So, okay, let's back up. The Ontario Pension Plan, who is that? They're an organization that they invest and they take care of the pension for the province, for all of Ontario's teachers, right? The active teachers, the retired teachers. So there's over 300,000 teachers that are a part of this plan. Number two, again, it's excuses. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Let me give you a little hint here. When someone gives an excuse, they're saying, leave me alone. I don't want to be challenged. Your mind works the same way. Your mind is a result of whatever you feed it. If you feed it positive and worthwhile information, that's what you're going to reap in life. You're going to reap worthwhile and positive, have a positive life. Okay? If you feed it negativity or confusion, that's what you're going to reap in life. Negativity, confusion. Good evening. Good to see you all in the house. Let's see who we have in the house. Let me just read the chat box and see who we have. We have Lloyd in the house. What's happening, my brother? We have Steve in the house. Good to see you, Mr. Dunn. I see Paul in the house. Good evening, champion. My beautiful wife is in the house. Good evening, Tamoy. Alice is in the house. Miss Wenga, Diane Wenga is in the house. And we have Divine Ananka, Mr. Ananka in the house. And I see George Wong, Mr. Wong. Mr. Wong is in the house. Good to see you, champion. Good to see you. Let's see who else we have in here. We have Henry's also in the house. Good to see you, champion. Alphonse is there. Good to see you, brother. Mr. Zachary, Jean-Marc. I see all of the champions. A lot of champions are here. By the way, if you're in the house and you want everyone to know you're in the house, Hornila is in the house. Good to see you, champion. And if you have someone that should be in the house that is not here and you didn't see their name called, reach out to them. Reach out to them and say, hey, listen, Money Monday is starting. You're missing something. All right. By the way, we are here every single Monday. This is open. You can invite friends, you can invite colleagues, you can invite your neighbor, you can invite your auntie, your uncle, you can invite anyone that you think is going to benefit from this message. We're here every single Monday, and the topic is money. You know, last week, we did a little segment in our Money Mondays, basically what's happening in the economy. And we looked at a couple of things, and I got a few phone calls that, Jermaine, that was pretty insightful. We like the updates that you were giving in the economy. So I thought I would do another one this week. All right. So what's happening in the economy? You know, people ask me all the time, they say, Jermaine, what is your opinion on cryptocurrency as an investment? And I always respond, right, in the same way every single time. If you invest in something like cryptocurrency, invest money that you can afford to lose. All right. That money, if you lose it, you should be okay with it. There should be no hard feelings if you lose the money because of the risk, right? Because of the risk that's involved with investing in cryptocurrency. So if you follow the news at all, the financial news I'm talking about, you'll see that FTX filed for bankruptcy. Now, for those of you that don't follow FTX, it's a cryptocurrency trading exchange, right? So this company was started in 2019, fairly new company, right? We're in 2022. Okay, one of the fastest growing cryptocurrencies. It ended up having over 1 million users. And it was the third largest cryptocurrency exchange by volume. And on November 11th, so last month, they filed for bankruptcy. Now, what's interesting about this story is on December 12th, the founder, which is Sam Bankman-Fried, okay, He was actually arrested for allegations on fraud and all kinds of stuff, right? They went after him. So he's in jail right now. They literally just arrested him on December 12th for what's going on and his involvement with the collapse of the company. Because when they started investigating, they said something doesn't add up here, right? This guy lost $32 billion. The company then went from 32 billion literally down to like nothing in a couple of days, right? His net worth went from 30 billion to like zero overnight, right? Like he lost his fortune. He ends up in jail. Why am I telling you this? Because the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, an article came out that they're writing off $95 million loss. So, okay, let's back up. The Ontario Pension Plan, who is that? They're an organization that they invest and they take care of the pension for the province for all of Ontario's teachers, right? The active teachers, the retired teachers. So there's over 300,000 teachers that are a part of this plan. The pension plan of December 2021 was over $246 billion. That's what they had in assets and what they were working with. So it turns out that the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, they had approximately $95 million tied into this cryptocurrency investment with FTX, right? So they put $95 million to go to work, but what happened? They probably won't see a single dime of that money. I want to know what your thoughts are. You can put it in the chat. What are your thoughts? You see there, it says, this is the second time, okay? This is the second time that a major Canadian pension manager was forced to write off a crypto investment. So here's my question, how I'm posing it to you. What are your thoughts? Considering that this is the second time that a major pension fund was forced to write off a crypto investment, do you think that the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan should have gambled with the teachers $95 million? Do you think that was a good idea? Yes or no? You can put it in the chat. What do you think? Was that a good idea? Should they have dumped $95 million? Okay, we got some no's coming through. No, right? No. Here's why I'm telling you this. There is a lot of high risk investments out there. There's a lot of get rich quick. There's a lot of people thinking if they don't invest in the crypto market now, they're going to miss the boat. By the way, this is not investment advice, but now that crypto is down, probably should have been the time that they invested in it when it's down. Right now, they took a $95 million haircut with the retirement money of all of the Ontario teachers' pension, right? Which makes zero sense to me. Absolutely zero sense. Makes sense? Make no sense to me. But I'm happy to see that you guys think the same as me. And, but there's a lot of investments out there that people should stay away from. They're trying to get the quick buck. They're trying to get the fast money. And there's no such thing as get rich quick, right? No such thing. Make sense? So I just wanted to point that out to you. Zachary said, yeah, they were too aggressive. Absolutely too aggressive. But you may have people that tell you, hey, this is where it's at. This is the new shiny thing, the new shiny investment, cryptocurrency. Dump your money into it. The sad reality is there's people that mortgage their house to do this, right? I know people that mortgage their house to dump into cryptocurrency. All right. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad investment, but I go back to my original statement. Only invest money that you can afford to lose. I don't know. Can the teachers' pension plan afford to lose $95 million? I don't know. Maybe they can, right? Maybe that's their argument. We could afford to lose that. Beats me. Let's jump into our topic today. I want to tell you a quick story. Quick story before Zoom. All right. Before you and I would connect like this on Zoom, we actually used to have our meetings in Richmond Hill. So we would basically invite you to come in, and you would sit face to face, and we would physically have a meeting in Richmond Hill. And I remember, so that office, by the way, is Highway 7 and Leslie. If you know the area, if you've been there before, you know what I'm talking about. So years, way before there was any type of Zoom or anything like this, we used to also have the expansion meetings there where guests would also come. So while we're training in one room, there's the guests in another room, right? And I remember, I was driving in. So it was a particular Wednesday evening. I drove about an hour and a half of traffic, because at that time I was coming from Brampton to Richmond Hill, about an hour and a half of traffic. I make the left turn in, okay? And I see that there was one parking spot available in the front. It was like the parking spot was calling me, "Park here, Jermaine, park here," right? It's in the evening. There's a bit of a fight to get a good parking spot because there's people leaving, there's people coming, and it was kind of busy at that time. But here's this parking spot waiting for me. So I put on my indicator and I go to turn in and make the left. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this middle-aged man driving a blue Honda Civic coming from the opposite direction, he turns in, right? Making the right, he turns in, he nearly hits me, and he takes the spot. Now, in that moment, I was fuming, okay? I was fuming. My natural reaction was to basically wind down the window, all right, and get so angry, get so mad. What's happening? You just took my parking spot, right? I was cranky. I was fuming. In fact, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I started to wind the window down. But in that moment, I caught myself and I started to wind the window back up. Okay. And I drove around the back and I found another parking spot. And in that moment, I said, "Jermaine, you're not going to let your ego control you today." And I walked into the office, took off my jacket, hung up everything. And I kid you not, one of our team members came up to me. They were so excited. And she said, "Jermaine, I want to introduce you to a guest of mine." And I kid you not, it was the gentleman that was driving the blue Honda. Now you can imagine how my face was. And the gentleman, what was pretty interesting about this story, the gentleman actually started doing business with us. Okay. He started doing business with us. And through him, we actually helped tons and tons of families to secure their financial future. And that day, I started to pay closer attention to my ego. Eckhart Tolle, he has a great quote. He says, "There's nothing that strengthens the ego more than being right." That's what the ego wants, to be right, right? That's the whole sole purpose of the ego, to be right. The ego is this habitual and compulsive thought process that's going on in your mind, all of our minds, because we all have an ego, right? And it's continuously going through our mind, all right? It's continuously going through our mind. Now, on my screen, you're going to see a little diagram here. It shows this conscious mind and it shows the subconscious mind. The conscious mind, this is the mind that involves all of the things that you're currently aware of, all of the things that you're thinking about. For example, you're thinking about, you wind the window down, the wind is coming on your face when you're driving, for example. You can pay attention to that. You can pay attention to your breathing. Right now, you can pay attention to your breathing, right? You feel yourself breathing. This is your conscious mind, the awareness of it all. The subconscious mind is the part of your mind that makes decisions without you even knowing, without you being involved in those decisions even, right? It just makes decisions on your behalf without you having to think about it, right? So it's your subconscious, below the awareness. Subconscious examples are your memories, for example. It's your beliefs. It's your fear, right? You're afraid of a spider, for example. That fear, it's not something that you're aware of. You see the spider, you react, right? That's outside of your consciousness. And then there's this little thing in between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, which some people call the critical thinker. Some people call it like the security guard. Some people call it the ego. Today, we're going to refer to it as the ego. You see that what that ego is doing is it's questioning every single thing. It's that voice that you're constantly hearing in your mind, right? It's that inner voice that's questioning everything. Right now, it's questioning, hey, what time is Jermaine going to be finished? I have to go put the laundry in, right? I got to go get dinner on, right? It might be questioning that. Another person's ego is like, man, this is good stuff. I got to take lots of notes. This is powerful, right? So the ego is in the mind. It's that voice in our mind. And it questions every single thing that comes through the conscious. It's very important that you understand how this relationship works, right? So here's the deal. How many of your financial, now we're talking about money, thinking about money now. How many of your financial decisions do you think you make consciously, right? Let's think about this for a second. If you're thinking about money, whether it's investing, whether, putting money aside to grow, not in crypto, we're not talking about crypto, right? Investing, other investments, saving, you want to save your money, or you're budgeting, or you're thinking about something simple as just going out and buying groceries, right? Going to buy some milk and some bread and all this kind of stuff. The ego is that inner voice that you hear. The ego, this is what's giving you the rationale for your financial behavior. Why am I telling you this? Because 90% of people aren't even aware of that little voice. Right? They're not even aware. And the people that are aware don't know how to control it. They just listen to it. Whatever the voice says, they just do it, right? They act on behalf of that voice. This is why I'm telling you this. So what does this mean and why does it matter? The short answer is, from a financial perspective, write this down. Ego costs you money. Let me repeat that again. Ego costs you money, right? Ego costs you money. So let's look at the ego. I have some characteristics of the ego. Let's go into it and we're going to see. All right. Are you ready? The ego wants to be heard. This is the inner voice that chatters endlessly in your mind. All right. That's that little voice right now as I'm talking. There's that little voice, that inner voice. There's the ego, right? And it's endlessly chatting. Sometimes many people want to put duct tape across the ego's mouth. We'll talk about that today. I'll show you how to do that, all right? So the ego constantly wants to be heard, yes? What else? The ego wants safety. You see that man there in a bubble, right? That's complete safety, all right? Living in a bubble. So with regards to money, ego creates anxiety, right? If the market is falling, what am I going to do? Oh my goodness, what's going to happen to my money? Where should I invest now? How do I save more money? The value of my home is lower. My net worth is the lowest it's ever been in decades, right? This is the ego talking. That's the ego, right? So the ego wants safety. Let me tell you something. Anytime you are doing anything that's relatively uncomfortable and that little voice comes into your mind, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing, Jermaine? That's the ego talking, right? That's the ego talking. And primarily, the ego wants safety. Remember that. This is very important for you to understand, because if you are doing something or you want to do something that your ego thinks is not safe, it's going to shut it down, right? And then you'll find yourself feeling uncomfortable, not wanting to do it, not wanting to move ahead, even though it's completely okay, right? What else? The ego lives in a physical reality. See, the ego doesn't know what the answers are inside, right? The ego doesn't look for internal answers. What does it do? It seeks them outside. So, for example, your self-worth, an egotistical person, to the ego, it's defined in the physical terms, right? So how much money do I have? That's what the ego looks at for self-worth. How big is my house? Some people define their self-worth by the size of their house. That's from the ego. What will others think about me, right? If this question is the primary question, what will others think about me? They're coming from the perspective of ego, all right? Ego wants to survive. The ego wants to survive. So it consumes any messages that gives it energy. Now, remember what I said earlier. The ego wants safety. The ego wants to survive. The ego looks in the physical reality. So it's going to look for messages that's going to prove it right. All right? The ego looks for messages around. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. It's looking for clues all around you to prove you right. So it looks for information that's going to confirm its own biasness, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say that the bias is towards crypto being a great investment. So ego says, yeah, crypto is a great investment. You want to do it. You know what the ego does? The ego goes and it wants information about rising crypto prices. And it's going to ignore all of the information about the falling crypto prices. You will convince yourself, if you're coming from the ego perspective, you will convince yourself to do it, right? And vice versa. Also, the vice versa is true. So that means if you know the investment is a good investment, but your ego is scared, it will find reasons not to do it. So the ego wants to survive. The next, ego rationalizes. This is tying into what I said previously. So the ego looks at it. I'll give you another example. The ego looks at it as, if I'm successful, it means that I was right. It's a confirmation. I was right. And if I failed, if I tried something and I failed at it, it just means, oh, that was a coincidence, or it was a fluke. It was an accident. And this is how the ego justifies and rationalizes things. I'm going to give you 11 signs that your ego might be keeping you broke. All right, get your pen and paper handy. We are going to jump into our topic. 11 signs your ego might be keeping you broke. Your ego is keeping you broke if, and number one, you blame. You blame. If you find yourself blaming people, whether a person, a situation, or a circumstance, it's coming from the ego, right? Maybe you blame your parents for not teaching you more about money. Maybe you blame the economy for things being so expensive. Maybe you blame the high interest rate environments that's happening. And you have these excuses, right? Excuses about no money or no time or all of these things, right? So the blame game is a big tip-off. This is a big sign, right? The blame game, the blame game. So number one is blame. Number two, again, it's excuses. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Let me give you a little hint here. When someone gives an excuse, they're saying, leave me alone. I don't want to be challenged. That's coming from the perspective of the ego. Okay, that's coming from the perspective of the ego. So excuses is another big sign. What's another big one? You know it all. Man, oh man, you just know it all. Like nobody can tell you anything. The person that comes from this perspective says, I can do much better. They have a I can do much better attitude. Right? Yeah, I see all of these. I could do that much better. I could present much better. I could say it much better. I could do it much better. I already know. They have that mindset. I already know that. You know, this is one of the things that's banned in our household. Our kids are not allowed to say, I already know that, right? And it's because of this reason, coming from the egotistical. Because a person that's saying, I already know that, guess what they do? They tune you out. They tune you out. You can't teach someone that already knows everything, right? I already know that. They tend not to listen to advice. Can't teach me anything. I remember when I was working at a company called Kretschmar in Don Mills, Victoria Park in Lawrence area in Scarborough. And my job was to train a lot of the mechanics how to use some of the equipment. And, you know, you would train them. And after you finish training them, immediately you ask them, do you understand everything? And guess what they say? They immediately nod their head. Yeah, I understand. Even though a big majority of them didn't understand or didn't know, they still nodded their head. Yeah. Why? They're protecting their ego. By the way, the ego does not like to be bruised, okay? Remember, it primarily wants to be right. Right? So it's going to protect that at all costs. So even though these people didn't know how to use the equipment, they're still saying, yeah, I know, right? Because they're protecting their ego. Number 4, defensive. You're always defensive. Right? You're always explaining. You're always defending. You know, you talk to the person, you said, hey, listen, you're 35, you haven't started saving any money. And they start defending and explaining why they haven't started saving any money. You haven't started your long-term saving. They defend exactly why they haven't saved for their long terms. By the way, I want to tell you something, a little bit of digression here. The graveyard, in the graveyard, if you were to wake up everyone that's dead in the graveyard, they're all going to have a reason why they're in the graveyard. Everybody, right? I got cancer, I got hit by a car, I fell off of a building, you know, everyone is going to have a reason as to why they're in the graveyard, right? I'm telling you that because from an egotistical perspective, we tend to be very defensive and explaining why. It's not about the why. It's not about defending, right? The reason. Make sense? It's not about that. Number 5, people pleaser. You're a people pleaser. I don't want people to avoid me. I want people to like me. This person's sole desire is to avoid conflict. They don't want any conflict. They don't want to make people unhappy. Their whole purpose is to make other people happy. I've seen once where they're such people pleasers that a salesperson literally will offer them a product that they don't need, right? They have tons of these products. They don't need it, but just so they don't make the salesperson unhappy, they purchase. They're a people pleaser, right? They can't say no. They can't say no. Number 6, fear. Fear. They act out of fear, or they don't act out of fear. When they act, it's out of fear. And when they don't act, it's also out of fear. What if I mess up? What if I make a mistake? What if I'm not perfect? And if you find yourself thinking like this, you got to step back a second and you got to ask a follow-up question. Here's my secret follow-up question. Are you ready? Write this down. Secret follow-up question. When I find myself thinking, oh man, what if I mess up? Or what if it doesn't work out the way I think it's going to work out? Or what if it's not perfect? Secret question to combat all of this. What is the worst that can possibly happen? And you list all of the worst things that can possibly happen. And then you assess your risk based on that, not based on fear, but based on your assessment. Okay, so that's number 6. That's number 6. Number 7, let's do a recap. So number 1 is the blame game. Number 2 is excuses. Number 3 is you know it all. Number 4 is you're defensive. Number 5 is you're a people pleaser. Number 6 is fear. You act out of fear. And number 7 is jealousy. Jealousy is a big one. Why? You see your neighbor, they do the concrete around their house. Guess what you do? You go and get quotes and start doing the concrete around your house. The neighbor goes and gets a pool. You go get a pool, right? They upgrade their car. You upgrade your car. They go buy a nice expensive belt. You go buy a nice expensive belt. And this starts to propel this unnecessary spending that you wouldn't have done otherwise. Jealousy, right? Jealousy. Another one that fuels this is social media. Social media causes so many people to do things that they normally wouldn't do, but they're seeing it, right? And I want to give you something about the social media, by the way. When someone posts something for 30 seconds or a picture, I want you to understand that's a moment. Nobody posts on social media when they're falling apart, when life is not working. They're giving you a moment in time. They're giving you their highlight reel. You know, when you're watching right now, you can go back and, you know, if you wanted to see what happened with the World Cup, you could watch the highlight reels, the important moments, right? The top moments where they scored the ball, or, you know, they made an amazing pass, or, you know, they call this the highlight reels. These are the top moments of the entire game. You can actually trim these down into small 30-second segments, but that does not reflect the entire game. Same thing. Social media does not reflect the person's entire life. It's just a highlight reel. It's just a moment that was caught where they were happy, or, you know, showing to be happy anyway. Who knows if they were really happy? And then you go and you compare yourself to that. You compare yourself to the neighbor that went and upgraded their car and didn't know that they upgraded it all on credit. You were quite fine because yours was paid off. You didn't owe anybody any money. There's no debt on it. It worked fine. But you went and upgraded, right? You went and upgraded. I'm telling you this because it's a real story. We literally had a client, this was a couple of years ago, and the lady was about 400, and I don't recall the number, but it was around, let's say, $430 in the negative every month. And when we dug down, we found out, I said, why are you $430 in the negative? Something changed. What changed in the last little bit? And she went and she bought a car. And I said, how much is the car? How much are you paying every month for this car? And she was paying literally that exact amount, let's say $430. She was paying that every month. And this was what's causing her to be in the red. Before, she was in the black. She wasn't in the surplus, but she wasn't in the negative. And I said, well, why did you get a new car? She said, I wanted one. I said, okay, well, was the other one not working? She said, no, it was working fine. I said, well, was there an issue with it? Was there a reason why you wanted to upgrade the car? She's like, no, I wanted to upgrade it. So when we dug to the bottom of it, her coworker got a new car and she thought it was time for her to get a new car. Now she's $430 in the red every single month. Okay. Ego, right? It costs money. Most people, when the ego is costing them money, they don't even know it. This is the worst part. This is the worst part. One of our, I think it was the second Money Monday, was about inflation. And I labeled it, inflation is the silent thief. I'm going to tell you, ego has stolen more money from people than inflation has. Ego costs people so much money, they just don't know about it. They just don't know about it. So number 7 is jealousy. Number 8, self-righteous. Self-righteous. So when an ego-driven person asks what we do, right? Jermaine, what is it that you do? And I explain to them what we do. Someone coming from the ego will say, I could never do that. But their reply is not, I couldn't do it because of their skill set or because they are not capable of doing it. It's a condescending. They're talking down like, I would never do that, right? As if it's something that's beneath them. This is what we're talking about, self-righteous. Self-righteous. I don't know what's so wrong about helping families, putting them in better savings habit. We are the only company talking about saving money, putting money to better use, not wasting it, right? So I don't know what's so self-righteous about that, but many people come from that self-righteous direction. It's beneath them. So watch out for that. Watch out for that. Some people think that, just saving regular amount of money every single month is beneath them. Number 9, judgmental. So you present an idea to someone, you know for a fact that it's going to help them. You know for a fact it's going to put them in a better situation. And their response is, you probably just want to make money off of me. You're only doing this so you can make money off of me. While that could be true in many cases, the majority of the times that response is from the ego. They're coming from an ego-based response. All right. And number 10 is staying in the comfort zone. This is a huge one. What does the ego like? It likes to be right. It likes to be safe. So can the ego be safe outside of the comfort zone? The ego does not feel safe outside of the comfort zone. So people like to feel settled, right? They like to have that calmness that everything's okay. The boat is not rocking. They want to feel settled. The problem is you can't want more for somebody than they want for themselves, right? You can't want more for me than I want for me. It won't work. I can't want more for you than you want for yourself. So when someone is in the comfort zone, that ego is costing them money. Number 11, justification. It's always been done that way, Jermaine. Always it's been done that way. Why we want to change it? And they justify everything, right? They justify everything. They say things like, everyone I know around me is in debt. I actually heard someone say that before. Everyone I know is in debt. So it doesn't matter if I'm in debt, they justify. All right? They justify. So what were these 11 signs with the ego? The blame game, excuses, knowing it all, defensive, being a people pleaser, fear, jealousy, self-righteousness, judgmental, staying in the comfort zone, and justifying everything, right? So here's what I'm challenging you to do. Look at all of these 11 signs. I'll go back, all right? Look at these 11 signs and see, do you identify with any of these ego signs? Do you identify? Do you identify with number 1 and number 3? Do you identify with all of them? A little bit of some, right? Do you identify? I want you to take an assessment and an inventory. Which one of these ego signs is costing you money? Which ones is costing you money? Okay? Which one is costing you money? I have another question for you. How much money do you think your ego has cost you right now? We are December 19th, 2022. How much has the ego cost you up until now? If you had to put a dollar amount on it. And I promise you, if you could figure out that dollar amount, you would probably take this exercise very, very seriously and not let your ego cost you another single penny. I like this slide here. It's Albert Einstein drawing on the chalkboard. Now, I can't verify if he said this or not, but I just like the slide where it says ego equals I over knowledge, and more the knowledge, lesser the ego. Lesser the knowledge, more the ego. How do you silence the ego? Through awareness. You just need to become aware of what's happening, aware of that little voice. That little voice is not you. The majority of people, they think that little voice in their head is them. So they accept whatever that little voice says and they just do it. They don't know it's completely different, right? You are not your ego. Your ego is not you. You know, on a different topic, my daughter, Olivia, she's 5 years old, right? And every time that she sees me eating something that's not healthy, she points it out. She makes it a point to point it out. So I'm drinking and I like soda, okay? Don't judge me. I like pop. And she comes, she says, Daddy, what is that in the cup? I try to hide it, right? So she doesn't see what's in it. She says, is that soda? I'm like, yes, it's soda. I say it very ashamed, right? And she's like, Daddy, you know soda is not healthy. And I said, yes, I know. Why are you drinking it, Daddy? And I have no answer, right? So imagine me having to hide from my 5-year-old daughter to go drink soda, okay? You probably heard of a physical diet for your health, right? You go on a diet, the doctor says, hey, you need to cut the cholesterol. You got to go on a diet, right? If your diet's not good, you got to change it so you can get your body back healthy. My question for you is, you've heard of a physical health diet, but have you heard of a mental diet? Have you ever heard of a mental diet? I'm going to give you something to prepare for your 2023. All right? This is in preparation so that next 2023 can be the best year that you ever had in your entire life. Next year can be your best year. How are you going to do that? You're going to go on a mental diet. Okay? Your mind is like a garden. What do I mean? You reap what you sow. So if I plant corn, what's going to come up in the garden? Corn. If I plant apples, I'm going to get apples. If I put peach, I'm going to get peach. Whatever I plant, if I plant tomato seeds, I'm going to get tomato. Your mind works the same way. Your mind is a result of whatever you feed it. If you feed it positive and worthwhile information, that's what you're going to reap in life. You're going to reap worthwhile and positive, have a positive life. Okay? If you feed it negativity or confusion, that's what you're going to reap in life. Negativity, confusion. And if you feed it nothing, that's what you're going to reap. Nothing. So let me put it this way. A mental diet basically is you monitoring your thoughts and you feeding yourself positive content. Let me repeat it again. A mental diet is you monitoring your thoughts. So monitoring that little voice in your mind, right? Monitoring it, monitoring the thoughts, and feeding your mind positive content. So positive content, I'm talking about your thoughts, your ideas, everything that empowers you, that helps you move towards the goals, your overall goals that you have in life, your purpose, why you were put here on this earth, things that are good for you. Now, one of the things that you got to do during this mental diet is not allow any limiting beliefs. No limiting beliefs are allowed and no doubts are allowed. All right? Now let's do it. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick a 30-day period on your calendar. You need 30 days, 30 full days. You mark this 30-day period on your calendar with the intention of going 30 consecutive days. How many? 30 consecutive days. Each day, you're keeping your thoughts positive and focused. Positive and focused. And your goal is to go 30 days and keep your mind focused where you want it to go. Not where that little voice is taking it, right? It likes to take it on all kinds of journeys. No, you're going to keep it focused where you want it to stay focused on. This is your mental diet. Now listen to me. Listen to me very carefully. You're going to have some negative thoughts. You're going to have some fear. But you have to catch them. And you got to change them into positive. You say, Jermaine, how do you do that? I get negative thoughts all the time, and I don't know how to change it. I want you to think of your thoughts like the channels on a TV. You know, when they used to have the TV with the remote, you sit and you can change it, the cable TV, change all the different channels. I want you to think of your thoughts like the channels on a TV, right? So your thoughts are the channel in your mind's TV. So if a negative thought comes in and it sneaks in, just change the channel. Just change the channel. All right. And every day, what you got to do is you mark a big check mark on the day on your calendar that you were successful that you completed that day successfully by keeping control of your thoughts. So every day that you did a successful, complete day, what you're going to do? Put a big check mark on that day. All right. Now, remember, if you completed, let's say, 28 days of controlling and focusing your thoughts, and then out of the blue, you have a temper fit, right? You got angry. You got mad. You had a little episode like what I had in the parking lot where our guest was accidentally took the parking spot, right? And hit me nearly hit me in the meantime. You have a temper fit. You get angry, right? You get so mad, you lose it. You lose your temper. And you weren't able to get off of it. Or let's say you have a road rage, or you explode at your loved one, or you explode at a friend, and you just have huge anxiety. Then guess what you got to do? You got to start all over from day one again. Why? Because you have to have 30 consecutive days of pure mental focus and positivity. All right. When you complete this 30-day mental diet, you have to have 30 days back to back with this new habit. What you're doing is you're creating a new habit. You're thinking about what you're thinking about. You're monitoring your thoughts. Okay. Many of you have never heard it in this way before, but I'm giving it to you in a way that will make sense to you. Experts, they say it takes 21 days to create a new habit. Okay. 21 days to create a new habit. Now, let me just be honest with you. Can I be honest with you? Can I be honest with you? Yes? Okay, let me be honest with you. This is going to be the hardest thing that you will ever do. Let me repeat that again. This is going to be the hardest thing that you have ever done in your entire life. Changing your mind and your thoughts, your attitudes, your beliefs is very difficult. Very, very difficult. It's easy to talk about it, easy to say it, but it is so difficult. Why? Why is that the case, Jermaine? Well, you have held on to your attitudes, let's say, for many, many years. How old are you? You have held on to your attitudes for that length of time. You say, Jermaine, I'm 42. You've held on to your attitudes for 42 years. And so you have a habitual way of thinking. And changing that habitual way of thinking is going to take time, and it's not easy. It's going to take time, and it's not easy. But you need to continue to try this mental diet until you've completed 30 consecutive days. All right? Let me ask you a question. How many of you are willing to go on a 30-day mental diet and just like tear it up? How many of you are willing to do that? Because this is going to change your direction going into 2023, right? You want to have the most powerful year, 2023. Listen, don't judge the future based on your past. Don't judge what you did, what you want to do next year based on what you did last year or this year. You're a new person. You're a brand new you. At any moment, you can make a decision. At any moment, you can go on the mental diet. At any moment, you can change your way of thinking and become the person you're supposed to be. So I challenge you to go on this mental diet. And if you fall off, hey, jump back on again. If you need an accountability partner, feel free to be accountable with me or somebody. Get on an accountability schedule with somebody and be accountable to being positive and focus for 30 straight days and see what it does to you. See what it does to your life. Watch your life change. Watch abundance start to happen for you. All of a sudden, prosperity starts to happen. You know, the bank account just has more money than it usually does. The credit card has less debt on it than it usually does. You become more organized. Things around you become more organized. And all of a sudden you're thinking, is this good luck? Am I just lucky? No, you changed your mental diet. Remember, it's like a garden. Whatever you sow, you put apple seeds, you're going to get apple seeds. But if you plant, I don't know, a poisonous berry, you're going to get a poisonous berry. My challenge to you is plant the right seeds, reap the right crop. Hey, thank you so much for watching another Money Monday. We hope that you got value from today's content. And if you did, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And like always, inspire change.